Welcome to the raw and uncensored Ambitchious Podcast. During our time here together, I will be instilling all of the strength, power, and determination you will need to use the very stones thrown at you to build your ultimate empire. We will redefine the word bitch from the derogatory to the acronym being in total control of herself. So let's adjust our crowns and prepare to live life ambitiously.
Yeah, here I am, the original HBIC, Katie motherfucking Boyd. And on today's episode of the Ambitchious Podcast, we're going to go part 3 for boundaries, since a lot of you motherfuckers out there cannot keep boundaries if your GD life depended on it. And I'm sick of hearing about it because let me tell you, if I can do it, anyone can do it. Okay. So we're going to talk today about how to set boundaries with your parents, with your children, with your friends, why it's so important to set boundaries with those 3 separate demographics. And then we're going to get into how do you step back into your power and reclaim your energy and remember who the fuck you are before you became a boundaryless bitch. Okay. That's what we're talking about today on the Ambitchious Podcast. But in the meantime, okay, I want you to understand that I could make lots of money having people endorse and sponsor this podcast, but I don't want any motherfuckers telling me what to do because you know I'm an HBIC, I'm a rebel, okay? I'm a loner, I'm a rebel, Dottie, as Pee Wee Herman would say. Rest in peace, Pee Wee. So that being said, when we are here, the reason why I don't fucking take nobody's money is because I am a sovereign, autonomous bitch, and I want to make this so valuable to you. And I want to talk about selling rubber underwear for 3 hours, like most podcasts. But what I will say is you do owe me something. I put a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of effort into this podcast every week. And I think we're on like our 220th podcast now. So think of like the hours and the money and the time and the blood and the sweat and the tears where so many other people who have started podcasts in the past have already just given up because it's a fucking hard road. But I said to myself, I don't care if there's 1 billion people that listen to me or 3. This is something I love to do. I think it gives so much service and so much value to so many. So we only ask you to do a couple of things. Number 1 is if you're listening to this on Apple or on Spotify or wherever you consume these podcasts where you can actually give a review, please do it. And if I read your review on this podcast, I will give you an amazing gift. I will send it to you in the mail. The second thing is, as Andy Frisella would say, you got to pay the fee. What is the fee? The fee is telling as many people about the Ambitchious Podcast and the Ambitchious movement as possible. And the third thing is, if you haven't already, scroll down to the show notes and sign up for the free month of the Ambitchious app. I know you're going to love it, and I want you to fall in love with what we're doing over there so you can 100% take that dog for a walk, try it before you buy it. And then we know you're going to love it, and we know you're going to end up buying it. And if you're a local lady, you can get the free month of the app and free classes on KBMFC at KBMFC in Hudson, New Hampshire. The other really cool thing about it is if you cannot make it to class, we film all the videos from our workouts and we post them on the app. It's just like one of the offerings, one of the deliverables that we put over on the Ambitchious app. So that's all I'm asking you to do. I'm not asking for your money right now. I'm just asking for your time and just to spread the word. And you don't know like who this podcast is touching. I get so many people that email me and they're like, you changed my life and you made me feel strong and powerful. And I felt like, a big sister talking to me. That makes me feel so good. And it reminds me of like why I do this, because man, there's fucking days that I don't want to do this. There's days where I am exhausted and I feel like I've been given hand jobs on the fucking sidewalk for a good month without any hand sanitizer, no antibacterial hand soap, nothing, 0. Okay. I'm just a dirty bitch. And mama gets tired sometimes and she needs help from her ambitches. She needs help from her bitchhood. So please, please, please share this with as many people as you can and spread the word, because I know that one of the biggest parts of the world that is faulty and fucked up is that people just don't have boundaries. And people always are walking around feeling crusty and angry and resentful. And I know how that feels, and I don't want you to feel that way. And that's why I'm here, showing up week after week, talking about boundaries until I'm blue in the fucking face and the balls. So be a friend, share, and leave a 5-star review wherever you consume this podcast. Okay, we're going to talk about some hard things today. And this is an extension of the last 2 podcasts that we've done. And this is going to be like the roundout about the boundaries, but we are going to get into, because I've had so many people requesting this, is when are the boundaries so boundarying? I'm just making up words at this point. And people still don't fucking get it. They're not picking up what you're putting down. They just don't understand. And they keep pushing you, and they're toxic. When is it okay to cut someone out? So on an upcoming podcast, I am going to talk about when it's okay to cut someone out of your life and how you can do it with the least amount of effort and aggravation and upheaval as possible. Because I think that that's most people who really are afraid to cut someone out that they know is a cancer in their life. They're always like, oh God, like the known is so much easier, I think, than the unknown. But I promise you that sometimes, if not all the times, and I've cut a lot of people out of my life that were not serving my highest, greatest good, and they just weren't being good friends or whatever, it ended up being the best thing possible for me, but it was so hard to do it. And so I'm going to give you the Cliff's Notes of all the ways that I used to do that in an upcoming podcast. But today we're going to talk about having boundaries with your parents, your children, your friend, and then how to step back into your energy and remember who the fuck you are. So we're going to start with setting boundaries with your parents. Oh man, I have a tickly nose. I wasn't blowing lines before I got on this. So if you see this video, I don't know. I must have a fucking nose hair hanging from East Cuddy bumfuck. Whatever. Anywho's, moving on. Okay. So how to set boundaries with your parents. This is an IED waiting to explode. I've had to do it with my own parents. I've had to do it with other people's parents. I've had to do it with, family members. Listen, it's hard, but I'm going to teach you how I do it and how I've done it in the past. And I want you to really listen, because I was raised where it's like, well, it's your mom, it's your dad, it's your cousin, it's the cat down the road. Like, they're your blood. And it's like, I don't think that blood should give people more leniency to treat you like shit. And I don't think that we were raised properly. And I think that we were programmed really faulty to believe that just because someone's your family doesn't mean that they can't be bad for you. And just because someone's your family doesn't mean that you should just allow them to fucking manipulate you and ruin your life until they pass away. It's not okay. So how do we do this? So set this boundary for yourself and your partner, your parent, whomever, okay? By compassionately saying, so you want to start off like loving and kind. Okay, so this is the hard part, because I don't know how you are with your family, but I get like 0 to 100 real quick, because I'm just like, dude, you are my family. Like, you should know me better than anyone else. You should know like what hurts me. You should know what makes me tick. But sometimes they are the people that know you the least. And that is just the fucking truth of the matter. And I know I'm not the only person in the world that feels this way. And that's why we're saying this. So how do you set boundary with your parents? So you say to your parents, okay, just compassionately you start, I want to be here for you. I want to be there for you, but I don't think I can support you in this way, because I feel like a lot of us, including myself, were parents to our parents for a long time. Like when I was growing up, I refereed a lot in my home. My parents were really young and they had a lot of their own issues. And as a child, because children are so egocentric and it's not their fault. That's the way that their brain is shaped at that moment. They think like anything that happens around them is their fault. So like if your dad drinks, it's your fault. If your mom, is depressed, it's your fault. If this happens in the house, it's your fault, which is not true, right? Your parents are grown-ups. They have their own shit. But because you're a little kid, your brain always goes to, I have to make this right. And that's where a lot of people-pleasing tendencies come from childhood, is like that kind of dynamic in the home. So I have noticed that over the years, I've had to be parents to my parents, and I've had some unhealthy dynamics with them where like my mom, for example, would vent to me about things and I'm like, this is way above my pay grade. Like, I don't even know how to have this conversation with you. Now that I'm older, I can, and I'm more equipped. But when I was younger, it was so hard. And I know a lot of you out there in Ambitchious Land have very similar stories to me. So as an adult, the best thing that we can do for our moms and dads and, our caregivers and our family members, brothers, sisters, close cousins, aunts, uncles, grandparents, whatever, is say, I really desire deeply to be there for you, but I don't think I can support you in this way. And another thing that we have to do is, if we are not equipped to support someone in the way that they need it, we also have to be open to say, I think that maybe you may need like third-party help. Like, you may need to go see a therapist. You may have post-traumatic stress disorder or depression or anxiety or, fill in the blank with any kind of mental spectrum, neurodivergent situation that you're like, dude, I did not go to school for this. I love you. I want to listen to you. I want to help you, but this is not like my wheelhouse. And I know just as well as the next person that you can say things to people that can really fuck them up. And I don't ever want to be responsible for hurting anyone that I love. So you can say, I think that you have to go see a professional for this. They're going to potentially help you with the situation. And obviously, you always have to show empathy, especially to your family. But you also have to demonstrate it in a way where it's like, you can't feel bad about it. There can be no guilt tied to it, that you feel uncomfortable receiving and being privy to such intense oversharing or intense feelings or intense, could be even mental illness, right? And so when it comes to parental boundaries, it's a whole different ball game, right? Like, the boundaries with your parents are just like so whacked out. And I can't tell you how many times, like, I speak about this very openly, is I didn't speak to my mom and dad for a really long time, and we were all working on our own shit. And it ended up being like really healthy for all of us, I think, in the long run. But when you deal with parent stuff, and I'm just saying this from like firsthand, you are always going to be the bad guy. I will tell you, I remember I went to my 20th year high school reunion, and my mom, I guess, allegedly had ran into someone like at the store, and they were, like, oh, hi, Mrs. Boyd. Like, how are you? How's Katie? And my mother's like, I don't speak to her anymore. And then, like, of course, like, the person's like, oh, like, wow. Like, now this is not a person that like knows me and knows my family like well. They just know, like, we all went to school together like 20 something years ago. Now, I was very uncomfortable knowing that my mom even said personal business to these people, but everyone has their own level of comfort when speaking about their private lives. I'm more of a private person, even though like I speak a lot on social media, on my app, and on this podcast, and in my book about like my personal life. There's a lot of things about me and my life that you guys have no idea about, and you will never know, because some things have to be kept sacred. And I think my mom is just a little bit more open with people and like what she's going through. I like to keep that more to myself, because I feel like people either love to see someone who they look at as like having it all, have bad things happen to them in their lives. It's almost like, oh, see, they're not as perfect as they thought they were. Ha ha ha. Or people like the drama, so it just intensifies the situation. So when this person said this to me at my high school reunion, and actually two separate people came up to me at my high school reunion and said similar things to me. One person was more kind and loving about it, and the second person pretty much said to me, like, that's your mother. Like, I don't care what she's done to you. I don't care what issues you guys have. You should not speak to her. And like, they don't know what I've gone through. They don't know why I'm doing what I'm doing. They have no idea. And, it's like none of their fucking business. But of course, like when my mother, unbeknownst to me, speaks about our personal life to a total stranger who, she hasn't spoken to or seen in 20 years, they all of a sudden feel like they're in the know. Plus, because I'm a public figure, more than most people are, right? Because I air my dirty laundry out to the world through the podcast, my book, my app, etc. Because it's part of my business and it's part of how I teach. People just think like they can say whatever the fuck that they want. And I remember after that happened, I got blackout drunk on tequila because I was just so upset. I was like, wow, man, like I'm just trying to heal myself. I'm trying to heal my ancestral line. I'm trying to like be a role model to the people around me. And I'm trying to also heal my relationship with my mom and dad. And obviously, if I could have healed it properly, in my opinion, by talking to them all the time, I would still be talking to them. So mind your fucking business. But this is what people who have no lives, this is what they do. So obviously, when you put up boundaries with your parents, a lot of people are never going to resonate with that. And a lot of people are going to judge you for it. And you have to know that going into it. I'm going to talk a lot more about this in another podcast, an upcoming podcast. But right now we're just talking about boundaries. So I'm just telling you out loud on this podcast that when you start to put boundaries around your parents, your children, and your closest friends, people are going to have a fucking problem with that. I'm just telling you, I'm warning you. And I'm only saying this because of what I went through. So, as you know, as a child, it can be incredibly confusing to have your parent or caregiver, caretaker lean on you for support or express inappropriate emotions in front of you. And as an adult, you fortunately have more freedom and awareness to navigate boundaries with your parents. But either way, boundaries must be established, and they need to be established, guys. Whether you're young or an adolescent or you're a full-grown adult, children need to know that they have certain privacy from their parents. So, for example, a boundary around their parents reading their diaries or entering their room while changing their clothes. This never happened to me as a child, but I did a lot of research on examples, and I asked a lot of different people that I work with, like, has this ever happened to you? And they're like, oh my God, my mother would always read my diary. My mother would never, or my father would never knock when he came into my room. He just said, this is my house and I'll do what I want. And that can be, that can create so many problems with intimacy as we grow older. And also in the reverse scenario, children must know the guidelines around their parents' privacy and their parents' comfort level. Parents who want to set boundaries with their children may simply tell their kids to always knock before entering their bedroom or to ask before using certain household items. So young adults may need to set boundaries around their parents' guidance for suggestions. And this is a huge one. Parents often have an idea of how they desire their child to live their life, and even if it's well-meaning, and it can be harmful to your sense of freedom and self-sovereignty. And adults can draw this boundary by expressing to their parents that they prefer not to receive unsolicited advice or judgment about their decisions and will ask for help when needed. Again, I never really had these types of problems with my mom and dad. My problems were more like when I was young and my father was dealing with his alcoholism and his addiction. I feel, and this is my personal opinion. So mom, dad, if you're listening to this podcast, this is nothing against you. I just feel like when I was growing up, I was put into, and they didn't even mean to do this, by the way. I'm never saying that a parent means to do this, but they would put me in more adult type roles. Like I remember one year, and this is probably why I don't like the holidays, one of the reasons. But I remember one year my parents were going through a lot in their personal and their business lives. And my mom was dealing with a lot of depression. And she said like one year, like, we're not having Christmas. I'm not putting up a tree. I'm not decorating. I'm not buying presents. And we were just like, okay. And I was pretty young. I was probably like 8 or 9. And my sister was probably like 3 or 4 around that age. And I remember just being like, I have to save Christmas. And I remember like going and getting all the Christmas ornaments and decorating the whole entire house and putting up the tree and putting all the ornaments and decorating the mantle and decorating like the whole entire house. Cause it's actually, if you know me, you know that that's actually something I like to do is I love to decorate my home. And I actually do love the holidays for like the music and the food and the beautiful aspects. I just don't like all the forced interactions and just that kind of stuff. That's not really my cup of tea. And my mom was so grateful that I did this. And still to this day, like my mom will be like, remember that year I was so fucked up and like you decorated the whole house. It was so awesome, blah, blah, blah. But now that I'm 43 years old, I look back and I go, why was that my role? Why was that my responsibility as an 8-year-old to save Christmas? for my family, you know? And another thing is too, and this is like kind of a side thing, but when you grow up with siblings in a home, I want you to understand this. The parents that you were born to were not the same parents that your sisters and your brothers were born to. What do I mean by that? I was born in 1981. My parents were 24 and 25 years old. I think about me having children at 24 or 25 years old. I didn't even know how to wipe my ass at that point. I was just blowing random guys in the woods. That's what I was doing when I was that age, you know, partying my tits off, doing keg stands, going to frat parties where my feet stuck to the ground. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't particularly raising children and getting married and having a home and all that stuff. So I think that they were at a different place in like the, you know, my mom and dad are boomers, right? So they were raised by the greatest generation. They were raised in a totally different way than I was raised, you know? So I'm not saying like that they were all bad. They were actually, my parents were so amazing in so many different aspects. But sometimes like my sister will say like, I don't remember that. Like, I don't remember mom and dad being that way. And I'm like, yeah, because you were in a crib. And I was the one that was like, you know, taking the brunt of all the bullshit when you were in a crib. And even when you were 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 years old, I was experiencing my mom and dad as like a adolescent, like a tween, and you were experiencing mom and dad as like a 5-year-old. Totally different places in their lives. And I noticed, and I talked to a lot of people, that a lot of people who have like these dynamics with their moms and dads and their siblings have the same issue where their siblings are like, you're over exaggerating. They weren't like that. They weren't that bad. They didn't do this. What are you talking about? And I'm like, you were too little to remember. Or a lot of the eldest children in families are the ones that take like the brunt of all the bullshit in the home, and they protect their siblings from, you know, abuse or just like drama, trauma, etc. So never feel bad, guys, for feeling your own truth. And if people cannot back up your truth, that's okay, because your truth and their truth are not the same. Okay. So setting boundaries with parents, telling them, like, even as an adult, like, hey, I can't talk to you for an hour every day on the phone. Hey, I don't really like when you text me, like, why haven't you called me back after I've called you 5 times? Like, you know, my mom will do that to me sometimes, and I'll call her and I'm like, Mom, I am working, and I'm not trying to be mean, but it's just like, sometimes it's so frustrating. Like, a friend of mine or a client of mine, or even my own husband, would never speak to me like that. Like, why does my parents think that they can talk to me the way that they do? And I think it's like sometimes they infantilize. I don't even know if that's a word. I think it is. But they infantilize their children. Like, even though you're 40, you're still my little girl. And that's fine. But like, your little girl runs a multi-million-dollar corporation and has thousands of clients that she has to work with every day. And she has responsibilities. And she can't just call you back on a whim in the middle of the day. And that's okay. It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you a bad child. And I think that a lot of times my clients that I coach that have the same issues with their moms and dads or their caregivers, they'll be like, they just expect so much out of me. And I'm like, they expect a lot out of you because you've never set the boundary to say, hey, it really bothers me. Like in my case, it really bothers me when you text me incessantly throughout the day and you say things like, you never call me. You never call me back. Why is your phone always on do not disturb? And it's like, I am in meetings all day that cannot be interrupted. You know, I make thousands of dollars an hour to speak to people about their businesses and about their healing and all the things that I do. Like, there's and usually what I do with like my mom is like, I will either call her on the way to work before I get wrapped up, or I'll call her like on the way home. And then sometimes like the days are just so busy that I sometimes can be, and this is just me being honest, I can be in like a really bad mood. Sometimes at the end of the day, like I'm tired and I'm worn out and I've been talking all day long. And the last thing I want to do is talk more. And so she's been home and she's like, I can't wait to talk to Katie, which I love that. But then I don't have the bandwidth to do it. And I don't want to get on a call with my mom for sake of conversation and be mean to her because I'm in a bad mood. And they just don't understand that. And it has nothing to do with them. But if you put the boundaries up and say like, hey, I'm going to have my phone on do not disturb probably 98% of the time. And I'm going to call you when I have a chance. And if I don't call you every day, please don't take offense to it. It's not that I don't love you. I want to talk to you, but sometimes like I have to put myself first and I have to fill myself back up before I talk to you, because I want to make sure that when I do get on the phone with you, or I do go out to dinner with you, or I see you for a holiday, I'm in a good place, because that's about harmony. And that's about being the HBIC of your ambitious life with your boundaries, because you don't want to be mean to someone. I don't want to call my mom every day and just dump on her. That's what we're trying to talk about in the last 3 podcasts. It's like, you don't want to trauma dump on people. You don't want to just like use someone as a punching bag or a whipping boy to like just dump your shit energy onto. And then, because I know what that feels like. So you have to set boundaries with your parents in that way. And I just think it will create such a better relationship, a stronger relationship, and a more harmonious environment. You also have to say to people, like, I notice that like when my mom is in a bad place in her life, which we all get into those places, she will call me and just like want to start a fight. Like I can hear a tone in her voice. And I don't know if I'm the only one in the world that gets like this. And I'm sure that I have a tone in my voice when I'm not in a good place. And I'm sure she hears it too. But there's these days where it's like, you just know, like, oh God, this woman is not in a good mood. She's in a bad place. And I'm going to have to like do some like fucking damage control during this conversation. And I also think that, again, I'm going to say this ad nauseum, but we teach people how to treat us. So if my whole life I just let my mom trauma dump on me every time she's in a bad mood, and then like one day I just can't take it, and she's like, what the fuck? You've always let me do this to you, and now you're not letting me do this to you. You're like, in her head, she's like, she's sending me mixed messages. Those are how brawls start. This is how people gray rock people, and this is how people like just stop communicating with their loved ones, because they're just like, this is just too toxic, and I don't have the energy and I don't have the bandwidth to do it. So we have to put the boundaries up, and we have to keep, again, we have to keep backing the boundaries up over and over and over again. You'll probably have to do this for as long as you live. If you have one of those types of relationships with either both your parents, or either one of your parents, or a sibling, or an aunt, or a grandparent, or someone who's close to you that's blood. Okay. The second thing is the children boundaries. Now, obviously, I don't have children of my own. I have my stepdaughter, Karina, who's going to be 27 years old. So for me, it's like she's already like a grown ass adult. But when she was younger, and I have been with her father since she was, I think, 12 years old. And I pretty much adopted her as my own child when she was like 13 years old. So she has been my kid throughout like some of the hardest years of a young adult's life. But I don't have children of my own. So this is something that I did a lot of research on. I talked to a lot of my clients who have children about. So don't fucking come to me and be like, you don't even have your own kids, so why are you even talking about this? Like, shut up, bitch. Okay, mind your fucking business. I can still speak on something just because I have not experienced it firsthand, but like I have experienced firsthand, and sometimes in a much more difficult way, because I don't know about you, but it's really hard to raise someone else's child. Not a walk in the fucking park, tell you that much. So how do we set boundaries with our children? So setting boundaries with our children can be very tricky. And the question, I guess, is how do you find the right balance between finesse and caring and being like overly crazy? Because you know that can happen. There's a lot of helicopter moms I know, a lot of tiger mamas out there, a lot of them. Okay. So I'm just going to give you an example. So start by identifying daily scenarios where your child can exercise choice, such as selecting their own clothes or outfits to go to school, choosing their own snacks, or picking a bedtime story. So this is like more for little children. And we have to limit the options to those you find acceptable, right? So you're not just going to tell your kid, like, go into all your drawers and like, it doesn't matter if it's winter or summer or spring or fall, just pick out whatever you want. You can pick out like 3 outfits and say, which outfit would you like to wear, right? Or pick 3 snacks and say, which snack would you like in your lunchbox today? Or here's 3 stories. What story would you like to hear tonight? You don't let them go to the bookshelf and there's 1,000 books and they just have to go through it for an hour, because I know that can be a lot as well, right? So, that is how you're going to narrow these things down And so, for instance, instead of asking, like, what do you want for a snack? You can offer a couple healthy options. Or would you like an apple or blueberries or a banana? Right? That's how you do it. You don't give unlimited choices. Children will go Dixie with unlimited choices. And this approach actually teaches children to make decisions with their set predefined boundaries. So it's actually, we're grooming those children to have their own boundaries. So ensure that your options are clear, cut, and concise, particularly for younger children, because ambiguity can lead to confusion and frustration. And we also, with our children, and this is for everybody, but children really thrive on this, we have to utilize positive reinforcement. So whenever your child makes a choice that aligns with the boundaries you've set, acknowledge their decision positively. So for example, let's talk about the snacks again. If they choose a healthy snack with your options given, praise their choice by saying something like, that's a great choice. Bananas are delicious, or apples are my favorite, and they're really good for you. And they have a lot of fill in the blank with vitamins, right? They're going to make you feel strong and powerful. They're going to give you lots of energy, whatever crazy shit you come up with. Okay. But you want to, tell them that you're proud of them for making a good choice and why that choice is good. Okay. Over eating fucking Takis or hot Cheetos. Okay. You know what I'm saying? So that was about little kid shit. Now, when you get into older children, they're so fucking smart, and they will test you. And, raising Karina, and I've had a lot of my fair share of shit with her. We could do a podcast, just her and I, just talking about all the fucking crazy shit we've gone through. So it gets a little bit more difficult, but even as an adult, positive reinforcement works. I noticed that, the way that we were raised, we didn't get a lot of positive reinforcement. Boomers really don't give, greatest generation, boomers, and even like Gen Xers don't give a lot of positive reinforcement. More the millennials, the elder millennials and millennials, and like the younger generations more understand this, but it doesn't mean that those older generations are bad. I actually love those generations. There's such a great place for them still in this society. But I noticed just by growing up with these people, they don't give a lot of positive feedback and reinforcement. They like to punish, and they like to say like, because I said so, and things like that. And I just don't think that adults in this day and age, like young adults in this day and age, they're not going to take that for an answer. So we have to get a little bit more creative. The next thing is, and I talked about this ad nauseum on other podcasts, but I'm going to reinforce it again, is setting boundaries with friends. And I have cut out a lot of people from my life over the past decade because they were just toxic and they had no fucking boundaries, and they just would waste my damn precious time. And I know that you can always make more money. You can't make more time. So I had to cut these people out. And for everyone has a good reason. Everyone. And everyone, it's funny because everyone always goes to my mom and talks shit about me, which I'm just like, okay, whatever. But I'll never forget, like I cut one friend out, and she called my mom and told my mom that I was in a cult. Because I was just like, I can't do this with you anymore. And she was just like, oh, she's spiritual and she's meditating and she's doing all this like spiritual work. She's in a cult. I'm like, oh my God, whatever. You act like I'm like dancing for the devil or something on fucking TikTok. Just because I'm cutting you out because I'm spiritual. No, I'm cutting you out, bitch, because you're fucking toxic and you're a waste of fucking skin in my life. Sorry, not sorry. But friendship stuff can be a landmine. It could be a quagmire. It could be a swamp of sadness. And I do believe that having really tight-knit friend groups are vital to your health and your happiness and your joy. A lot of friends, especially if you were raised with shitty boundaries and you're a people pleaser and you have a lot of unhealed trauma, you will notice that you will start to attract like really toxic, taxing friends that have no boundaries. Or they may be super needy, and needy friends may expect a lot from you and not always give back in return. And I can't tell you how many fucking people I've attracted like that over the years. Go back and listen to the old podcast. If you haven't already, I talk a lot of shit about these people because they fucking deserve it. But if you need to establish more boundaries with your friends, it all begins with the confidence in saying no. Obviously, on our last podcast, we talked a lot about saying no. We've talked about the no is a complete sentence on my app. We've talked about it ad nauseum here, on the podcast. So I'm not going to get too much into saying no, but no is going to be your numero uno thing that you're going to do, especially if you're like me and you're a people pleaser. And this can be challenging because you deeply desire to make everyone happy. And you may have a hardcore difficulty saying no to someone asking for your help or attention, even if you don't have the time or the energy to do the thing that they need you to do or they want you to do. There also could be some personal work involved. And if you have a fear of rejection, or if you have this like very deep-seated need for validation, this can be harder to delineate your boundaries. It really can be harder to draw that line in the sand. But the friends worth having tend to understand and respect your priorities, and saying no is not a massive betrayal or a letdown. It's simply a skill you can practice to help establish more boundaries and make better friendships. It'll make stronger friendships. So like, God, if you have something life-altering, earth-shattering that happens in your life, you know that the people that are going to be in your corner, your friend circle, are going to be there, and you trust them, and they're going to have your back. And like at the end of the day, you can't fucking please everybody. And you can't light yourself on fire to keep everybody else warm. And this is one of the biggest problems why people are so unhappy in their lives. So how do we set really clear-cut, concise boundaries with friends? And then also, you can use these with your children. You can use these with your coworkers. You can use these with your parents, whomever. But we're speaking specifically about your friendship group or just singular friends. So the first one is you need to, excuse me, I've been sucking too much pee-pee, my tonsils. You need to set time aside specifically for yourself. So you just can't be with people all the time. I have so many friends that want to spend time with me all the time, and I don't have the time. I want to hang out with them. I want to go on vacation with them. I want to have dinner with them. I want to have drinks with them. I want to go to breakfast with them. I want to have coffee with them. I want to drive around. I want to ride a horse. I want to ride a unicorn. I want to slide down a rainbow, fucking climb up my apple tree. And we'll be jolly friends forevermore. Okay. My dolly playmate. You know what I'm saying? I want to do it all, but I can't because I run a very successful business that takes up so much of my time. I have a lot of responsibilities in my personal life. And when I do spend time with friends, I don't want it to be casual. I want it to be like an actual experience. That's just who I am. So the first thing is you have to set specific time aside to be alone in your own sovereign, autonomous energy. That's number one. Number two is you got to let your friends know when they can expect a response from you. So set this boundary so people don't get upset if you don't respond to their texts or calls right away. I had a friend recently that was like, I'm breaking up with you. Like you never text me back. And it's just like the thing with my mom. It's like, I have so many people text me a day that sometimes like I open the text and I'm like, okay, I'm going to get back to them on my way home, or I'm going to get back to them when I, go home and I sit and I can breathe. And then sometimes that doesn't happen. And, I don't want to ever feel like, oh, this person's not going to care about me or like me because I didn't text them right back or I didn't respond to their question right away, And the people that do put up a stink about that, like they're not going to be in my life for long because I have been around the block way too many times. And I know that that is a slippery slope. And that's a red flag. When people are too needy, they need you to like be in that like stimulus response. And I'm not a fucking rat in a Skinner box. You're not giving me cocaine and food pellets. I'm just sorry. I don't roll that way. I'm a human being. I'm not a human doing. And just know that if I'm not texting you back or calling you back or emailing you back right away, it's not because I don't love you. It's because I have so many other things pulling at me that are more important than talking shit about our neighbor or some person or whatever. Do you know what I mean? So just really, again, be like, hey, I hope that you aren't upset with me, but if I don't text you right back, it's not because I don't love you and it's not because I didn't read it. It's because like I have been so busy. That's it. And if they can't respect that, then they're probably not made for you to be your friend. The next one is you got to clearly express when you feel overwhelmed or ignored or unheard or stressed out or resentful or scared or whatever. If you really love your friends, you tell them like, hey, I'm not ignoring you. I'm just like so overwhelmed with my life right now. It's the end. Like, for example, when I'm doing this, it's the end of the school year. So many of my mom friends are like burnt out, so burnt out. They're sick. They're exhausted. They're trying their best. So, a lot of my mom friends are like, Katie, I'm not trying to not do this thing for you, or not trying to not do this thing like over here or over there. It's like, I'm at my wit's end, and I'm like, girl, like, do it when you can. Like, I love you regardless. And it's the best to be that way. If you're afraid to say no, start saying, I'll get back to you, and think about things before you provide an answer. That's usually what I do a lot of the times. Like when someone asks me to do things for them, I'll be like, hey, give me a couple days and I'll get back to you. I have to think about it, and I have to look at it's usually, and this is not a lie, this is a true thing. It's usually because I have to look at my schedule, because I'm a 90-year-old woman and I still use an at-a-glance planner. I do not use my phone for my calendar. I'm an old lady, and that's just how I roll. So that being said, like, I really actually do have to look at my calendar and get back to you. And that's the truth. The next one is, you got to let your friends know that you have personal goals and dreams that you're working towards. Like 98% of the population, most people are mediocre motherfuckers. And it doesn't mean that you can't have them as your friends and you don't love them. I don't really have people like that around me. I only hang out with people who are in my peer group or above me, because that's where I desire to be. I don't want to be constantly pulling people out of the shit pit 24/7. I already do that for a living. It's exhausting to do it also when you're at home or when you're with your friends or whatever. Like, there's only so many pep talks Katie motherfucking Boyd can give in a day. So you just have to say, like, hey, for the next month, like, I'm really working on this thing. Like, I'm going monk mode. I'm working on my book, or I'm working on a business startup, or I'm, going on vacation with my husband or whatever. Like, I'm going to be kind of sparse, but I think if you just tell people, they'll understand. It's when you don't tell people and they're like, why is Katie being so aloof? Or like, why is she so standoffish? Or why hasn't she been texting me back? Or why isn't she posting on social media? It's like, I might not even be in the country. But you got to just tell your people that. And the next one is, only offer to help your friends with things that you truly have the capacity for. Otherwise, suggest alternative ways they can get help with the situation. I can't tell you how many friendships have been ruined because people have overcommitted themselves to helping people. And, I always tell the story about how my ex-best friend was getting married, and instead of like spending money on an actual like caterer, she's like, we're going to cater the whole party for my bridal shower. And I was like, fuck it, let's do it. I don't give whatever. And I remember I was like dripping sweat in her kitchen. I was cooking, I was cleaning. Everyone else was having fun. Everyone else was like doing all the things. And I was like in the kitchen cooking, and she didn't even really help me. And then I'll never forget, her mom's friends came in and they were like, oh my God, this food is so amazing. She's like, one lady was like, what catering company are you from? And I'm like, I'm actually the bride's best friend. And I remember driving home like shaking, like diarrhea, like fucking so dehydrated, because I had like just worked. Like, I was a catering company. Like, I had a food truck of my friend's fucking wedding shower. Like, why would I think that was a good idea? And that was when our whole friendship started to really fall apart, because I was just like, you're fucking using me. You don't really love me. You don't really want me as your friend. You just like me because I'll do anything for you. And then I'm a good cook and I understand like manners and etiquette and aesthetics and all this shit. And you're just going to use me for what it's worth. And that friendship maybe lasted like maybe a year and a half more. And, I remember like the last time I ever saw her, I was like, I will never speak to this woman again, because I have just allowed one more time to happen where I was totally treated like shit and used and abused. And like, this is not my responsibility. It's just not, And the last one is, communicate that you are there for them, but you also prioritize yourself over everyone. You got to just tell people, like, I'm number one and I will do anything in my power to help you. But dude, like, I can only do so much. You know what I'm saying? So why the fuck do we need boundaries? I'm going to say it one more motherfucking time. So clean the goddamn potatoes out of your ears. Personal boundaries are the root of all fulfillment. So if you want to feel fulfilled, you want to have a balanced life, you want to feel whole, boundaries is how you're going to get there. And without them, people can quickly, I being one of them, lose themselves in their work, their relationships, their familial obligations, service to others, etc. They can even be exploited, which I have been, or taken advantage of, which I have been numerous times, by the people who do not respect them. Like, we think that these people love and respect us, but if they did, they wouldn't be treating us like this. The borders that are placed around boundaries will really, truly help you define what you are willing to say yes to and what you decide to say no to. And they give you a sense of agency and sovereignty. There's that word again, over your body, your life, your mind, your energy, your decisions, your time, etc. Boundaries are like an internal compass, and boundaries can all start with that gut feeling, that intuitive feeling that tells you when you have the time or the energy to devote to something versus when you need to say no. Good boundaries free you to live life on your own terms, and that's the motherfucking truth. So, you have been fucked in the ass with no lube, maybe your whole entire life, and your butthole is like a gaping, dark abyss, and you are sore, and there's not enough fucking diaper cream that will stop the pain. So how are we going to reclaim that energy? And how are we going to change our lives? So if you desire to stand in your power, remember who the fuck you are, that you are an ambitious, sovereign, autonomous queen. You are the head bitch in charge of your ambitious life. Then you have to reclaim your energy. You have to reclaim your time and your power. And you have to set boundaries that are crucial to your personal growth journey. That's just period, exclamation point, the end. And like, I know I'm not a dumb fuck, and it's very much the same in my arena, is boundaries are daunting. And setting boundaries does not need to be complicated. So what do? How do we reclaim our energy when we have been a boundaryless bitch for so motherfucking long? Well, here's how we do it. This is what has helped me. So number one is we're going to define our limits. So what supports you versus what distracts you from your well-being? So you have to ask yourself, is the thing that I'm going to do, is the person that I'm going to spend time with, is the action, fill in the blank, going to get me closer to or further away to the woman I desire to be? That's the first thing. Number two, we have to openly communicate our boundaries to people in our life. Bottom line, if you hear snoring, it's Pearl. She's under my feet right now in the podcast room, and she is like snoring, like sawing wood. So I apologize, but it's really cute. I'm not gonna wake her up. The next one is we have to remind people if needed, but always stick to your boundaries. You can't be like, Monday I have boundaries, Tuesday no, Wednesday yes, Thursday, because it's like the boy who cried wolf. Sooner or later, people are gonna like, just give her a couple days. That'll be done. That'll be old hat, you know. The next one is don't be afraid to say no to things that don't serve your highest, greatest good. Number 5 is, remember we talked about this before, create a bubble of personal space in your crowded situations that you find yourself in. Number 6 is take time for yourself. 7 is politely and gracefully decline invites. And number 8 is create a digital routine that separates work from personal life. And the bounds of your life will shape your growth and your relationships with people who you want to be around and who give you just as much as you give them. And you only have so much time, energy, and emotional capacity in a day, in a week, in a month, in a year, in a lifetime. So if you don't protect your well-being, no one else will. No one's coming for you. No one's sitting at home going, oh, I wonder if Martha feels good today. I wonder if Sarah has her boundaries really pristine and clear-cut and concise. I wonder if Katie feels like really like a bad bitch today. Like, no one's thinking about that. They don't give a fuck. They don't even think about themselves like that. So I hope that this podcast really helped you establish the clear boundaries. I hope the last 2 podcasts before this one really just fucking drilled it in your head. And when you establish those boundaries, you're going to have more freedom to live the life that you desire, to express yourself, and have more joy. That is my biggest thing. So if you seek more confidence to lay out your boundaries and fulfill your greatest potential, this is the way to do it. Re-listen to these podcasts to the point where it's like the back of your hand, you know it, and that you're not going to let any motherfuckers slip through the cracks and jump over the line that you've drawn in the sand 300 motherfucking times. And while you'll all be doing this work, I'm going to be doing this work as well, because listen, I'm not perfect at it. I still have not so fresh days. But in the upcoming podcast, we're going to talk about people pleasing. We're going to be talking about how to really cut toxic people out of your life. This is what this podcast is all about. It's what it has been about since day one. It's all about the 6 life makers. And if you have those 6 things in order, your life is going to be ambitious. If not, it's going to break your life. You're going to feel like a bag of smashed assholes, and no one wants to feel like that. So I hope that this podcast filled you up. I hope it educated you. I hope it entertained you. I hope it empowered you. And all I ask is for you to share this podcast with as many ambitious out there that you know. And I love hearing from you. So if you have anything that you'd like to share with me, it goes directly to me. It's at help, HELP, at kbmfc.com. Email me there with any comments, questions, concerns. And like I said, please share this with as many people as you can. Help really, truly make Ambitchious a true movement, a global movement. And like I always say, I'll see you next Tuesday. And don't forget to stay ambitious.